on the free 3.5-hour Project Camelot video that's on my website. You can go look it up. I met this guy in New York. I was stranded at the airport because of the snow. I ended up going to a Denny's. It was the only place that was open. I had brought the Montauk book with me for some reason, even though I thought it was all just a bunch of crap. And this dude walks by in like biker gear and a big burly beard. Big guy. So you like that stuff, huh? You like that Montauk? I said, oh my gosh, this is all a bunch of crap. He says, you know, I used to work for Preston Nichols. What? Preston Nichols is one of the authors of the book. And I just started laughing. I said, look, there's no way that you worked at Montauk, because Montauk is a joke. It's fake. Well, he kept on talking, and the next thing you know, he sat down, and we stayed up all night, and I had like scribbles all over the placemats. And I mean, this guy, and it's a shame that he doesn't want to go public, because I'll tell you, he's got an amazing amount of information. And I didn't go into it very much yesterday. Some people asked me to go into it a little bit more, so I will do that. You have to understand that there is a basic New World Order, an Illuminati, if you will, which is primarily run by the Rothschild family. The Rothschild means red shield, which is all kinds of esoteric symbolism we could go into, which I don't have the time for. The Rothschilds financed Stalin and the takeover of Russia, the Bolshevik Revolution, 1917. They have financed the French Revolution. They financed World War II. They financed Hitler, and they were financing the U.S. So they believe in order out of chaos. You fund both sides of a war, and whichever side wins, you got their vote, because you're their paymaster. You've given them their money. You control their financial supply, which means you can control the government. Okay? And you profit no matter what. Right. And also what happens is that the war stimulates the economy, so you get much more infrastructure and much more buildings coming out of it. That's why, for example, Ford Motor Company was building tank plants in Germany, which is why Hitler's Wehrmacht had the tanks. It was from Ford. When American bombers bombed Ford's tank plants in Germany, Ford personally repaid Hitler so he could rebuild the tank plants faster. Boeing actually was shipping, this has been documented, was shipping passenger airliners to South America, which were then sent to Africa, where they ripped the seats out and turned them into Hitler's bomber fleet. That was Boeing. These are American corporations. The whole idea of these big wars is a joke. It's a setup. It's a game that's played to play off the opposites against each other in the hopes of synthesizing a new world order where we all kind of synthesize. That's why Democrat and Republican is a joke. Okay? They want certain aspects of the conservative Republican Party. They want, for example, the cultish religious aspect, but it's not Christianity. That's why the liberal side is all about being open and being free and not having any of these traditional shackles on you. Because what they ultimately want is a racist society. They're very racist, and they're interested in a new world order which is run by a Luciferian philosophy. Now, this is very disturbing sounding stuff, but they actually believe that since they have the secret tradition that goes back to Atlantis, and that they've been persecuted for thousands and thousands of years by various people, nobody persecuted them as badly as the Roman government through the Catholic Christian Church. They were tortured, they were killed, so they came to the natural conclusion, you can understand anybody would have done this under the circumstances. What do you think they would choose? They would say, okay, whatever God these guys think is God, that's not the right one, because he's stringing us out on the rack, he's torturing us, he's killing us. Therefore, whoever the Christian church says is the bad guy is the good guy. Okay, wait a minute. Lucifer is the brightest light, the brightest angel in heaven, right? And he's the one that got tossed out of heaven. Well, maybe he got tossed out of heaven because he was too cool, right? Because everybody else in there was a bunch of corrupt shysters. Well, this is actually what the most powerful people in the world think. And they are a fundamentalist religion just like any of the others. They still believe this weird stuff. They follow these teachings. They actually buy into this, okay? So that's why it's weird, because you see these political parties that are siding with religious fundamentalist Christianity, and they actually do have a fundamentalist religion, but it's the mirror opposite. So their energy vibrates with each other, and that's why they work together so well. Don't forget, of course, that Hitler was also running on a Christian platform. And who was Hitler's main ally in World War II in Europe? Italy. Italy is the Vatican. The Pope and all that stuff was supporting Nazi Germany, okay? Because it was in the Vatican, which was in Italy, which was Mussolini. So, the reason why I'm telling you all this is not for you to have a fatalistic sense of doom. It's to also enlighten you to the fact that this is going on, that it's real, and that the Nazis were very, very proactive in rebuilding all of the ancient secrets that had been lost. Because for the first time, they had a world power government that could go out and militarily by force invade places that were being kept under lock and key with heavy guard, and go in and steal the artifacts and the technologies that would allow them to rebuild their so-called master race and all this stuff that they're so into. Okay? What's that?
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Raiders of the Lost Ark, exactly. So, what do you think happens when a UFO crashes in World War II, and the people who financed Nazi Germany, once it collapsed, they're looking for as much technology, as much goodies as they can get their hands on. So what do you think they're going to do when these UFOs crash? They're going to want to rip out everything from those UFOs imaginable and reverse engineer it and make it into something they can use. So what's the first thing that they go for? They take out the chair. Because these UFOs, you're sitting there in the chair and you say you want to go somewhere, you meditate on it, and a vortex opens up in front of the ship and you fly through it, and you pop through a wormhole and you end up somewhere else. Okay? So that's what the chair does. The chair is the interface with your consciousness. So when you understand that your consciousness is interfacing through the chair, that helps you get to a point in yourself where you can see that the chair is a psychic amplifier. That's what it does. The chair's function is that it takes your natural, innate psychic function and makes it vastly more powerful.
People may not know what the Philadelphia experiment.
Oh, the Philadelphia experiment was the result of the testing of high-energy arc welding on the creation of very large battleships by the U.S. Navy in World War II surrounding Norfolk Naval Air Force Base, which I used to be right near in Virginia Beach. What they found was that when you got this high energy, this was the highest arc welding ever done, like a big bolt of lightning. And it pinched time-space into space-time. So you get this black hole in the room. And then actually they were having tools disappear. So the tools never came back, and they realized there's something here we can use, and they actually designed it into something that they put on the ship in the hopes that the ship would be able to be invisible, like the tools became invisible. What they didn't realize is that they were going to jump from one place to another, and it had a devastating effect on the crew. Anyway, I don't want to spend all of our time just going through this old material, so we're going to get back to the chair. We're going to get back to the point that they could actually create a wormhole with the chair, with the psychics exercising their consciousness in the chair. They had help from, apparently, ETs from Sirius in designing the chair. And the chair allowed them to send people through time. There were multiple wavelengths that the chair cranked out on graph paper. Okay? Some of those wavelengths were corresponding to a natural 20-year harmonic in the Earth's vibration. And that 20-year harmonic, as it turns out, if people were moving through time, which is one of the things they found they could do, is send people through time, this wave would tell you exactly where you were in time, depending on where up and down it was. So what they found that was so bizarre was that at December 21st, 2012, they could calculate it down to the day, that's how precise this was, that for some reason all the graphs, all the waves would go into a complete flat line. They no longer moved up and down like before. They went flat for like 7 or 8 seconds. So then they're asking the guys that went through these stargates and were traveling into the future, what happened to you? Every single time that somebody tried to hit 2012, they said the same thing. there was this thing they called the bump. It actually hits you like a bump. You actually feel like you've slammed into something. And as soon as it slams into you, you have the most incredible religious experience you can imagine. Cosmic consciousness. Your consciousness just blasts into this wonderful place where you have awareness of no space, no time. All knowledge is available to you. Ecstatic God consciousness. You could be the galaxy, you could be a subatomic particle, you can go everywhere, do everything, and there's no sense of it ever ending. So when it finally stops, you just can't even believe that you're back to who you were before.
Like what happened to Jodie Foster?
Exactly what happens to Jodie Foster in Contact. So,
Is that the moment of no time then?
that's the zero time, yeah. And Daniel doesn't agree with me on this, but I believe that 2012 is our zero time reference. By the way, Daniel did say that the stargates are real, that there's one main stargate per planet, that they dug them up from ancient Atlantean technology. They actually buried it under the ice in Antarctica because they were concerned that something would come through that could damage human life. So that is real. Stargate SG-1, all those television shows, of which there's 10 seasons, the first and second year of Stargate SG-1 are remarkably loaded with real stuff. And there's even an episode of Stargate called Wormhole Extreme, and you remember that one? Where they're making a fake television show about a real Stargate program. It's like this inside tongue-in-cheek joke. And everybody watching the show kind of knows, okay, they're telling us something here. There's something real behind all this stuff. Well, it's true. Why do they do that? Okay, that's a very good point. The reason why they do that is that you hide the truth out in the open. So that if I go into this lecture and I'm telling you all this stuff, you can just say, oh, well, he's just into Stargate. You know, he's just watching television shows. But in fact, this was really cool. One time, I was sitting down with Daniel one day, and we're talking about the looking glass, and this has a little orb that appears when you're looking at a particular place, and it's a ball of light. So they gave it this really weird name. They called it an outer band individuated teletracer. Okay? Outer band individuated teletracer. And they shortened it to the word obit. Outer band individuated teletracer, an obit, right? So then we're thinking, all right, this is what they always do, right? They hide this shit out in the open. Let's go Google outer band individuated teletracer and see if there's anything there. I couldn't believe it when we went on Google after he just told me this. He had no idea either. And boom, Outer Limits. There's an episode of the Outer Limits called Outer Band Individuated Teletracer.
Wow.
And it's all about this stuff. There was a show. He was actually really interested in me too, because I seem to have some sort of psychic connection to these things. He says to me one day, what do you think a TVG is? I said, time vector generator. How did you know that? You're right. I don't know. Yeah. So I did not go to Montauk. I've never sat in the chair. Somebody asked me that. Were you in the chair? No. I was just very, very fortunate by some kind of crazy synchronicity to meet this guy. I wish he would go forward, but he doesn't want to. He did tell me, by the way, that they have found life on other planets. He said that the moon Io around Jupiter has little creatures crawling in the rocks. He said that Mars once had a civilization, that they've actually had astronauts on Mars, that they have a photograph that he saw of these astronauts waving with a big pyramid next to them. They actually have underground bases on Mars. There's a technology we've learned about from other witnesses now called a jump room, where you walk into the room, it's like an elevator, the doors close, you suddenly feel really sick to your stomach, the doors open, and boom, you're on Mars. Just like that. No time has elapsed. So these technologies already exist. And I would certainly like to have one. It would be a lot easier than taking an airplane flight. You can get over the stomach thing, I guess. So, you know, again, all gate travel is much better than using a ship. It's a much preferable method than traveling by a spaceship because you go a lot faster and you go a lot farther. And you can reverse engineer it by taking the seat out of the ship, which is what they're doing here. So, have these seats ever showed up in film so that they can hide it out in the open? Well, check this out. There's your seat. Now, this one doesn't actually have any consciousness interface, but some of the other ones do. Total Recall, Jump Rooms to Mars, Civilization on Mars, Underground City, Pyramid at the end, and once again, you have a chair that has a strong effect on your consciousness. In Stargate SG-1, they have the Chair of the Ancients, and O'Neill sits in it, and it activates and amplifies his consciousness, which allows him to defeat the evil fleet of the Goa'uld by shooting balls of light at them. Minority Report. Here you have people sitting in chairs, floating in water, and they are psychic, and it is amplifying their psychic ability, which Tom Cruise is then able to manipulate on a screen. One of the things that Daniel told me is that out of all the waves that this chair cranks out from the ships, that it also includes visual images from your pineal gland. And they can space them out and look at them just like in the movie. So this may have been designed to set the precedent so that someday they could actually create a department of pre-crime. Now, what also is very interesting is that the witness testimony we have of people going through these wormholes shows us that it looks like little light bulbs lined along the sides as you go inside. So that right there is not an accident.
We've already got pre-crime in Britain.
Really?
Jim Moss has been talking about it.
Oh, how about that? Jim Mars has been talking about pre-crime in Britain, he said. Okay, X-Men is another one. You remember Cerebro? Where he wheels up to this thing. This is actually the antenna at Montauk, except that it's a octahedron, 2 Egyptian pyramids base to base. But the same basic idea. There's a chair in there. You put this little helmet on. This is where you sit. And then it amplifies your psychic ability. That's what allows him to be able to find the missing mutants when they go missing. It's what allows them. Remember that one scene in X-Men where one of the whole movies actually, the plot is that there's an evil force that's going to harness his consciousness to get him to run the chair and basically kill everybody who's a mutant on the planet with the psychic amplification. So this is all based on this real technology. Now here's what was strange. This 20-year loop has a bad side effect. When the Philadelphia experiment happened 20 years ago, there was an enormous amount of energy released. That energy reflected through the time domain. It got stuck in the time domain. An enormous, almost a nuclear release of energy was caused in the Philadelphia experiment, or the Rainbow Project, in 1943. There's a 20-year harmonic, and during certain favorable points in the harmonic, if you have a huge energy release, you're going to get another one down here, and you have a conduit or a gateway between those two areas. Okay? This is bad. We don't like this. This is called a rift. It's very dangerous. It's very serious. 1943 created a rift. 40 years later with 1983, I guess somewhere around here. And 1983 was when a creature got through, August 13th, 1983, and trashed the entire base. And destroyed the Montauk base, destroyed the chair. It just so happens that Daniel called in sick and wasn't at work that day. So he didn't get mind wiped, so they didn't erase the memories out of his mind. So he remembers everything that he learned and everything that happened when he was working on this base. Somebody has a question. I just heard it in my head. What kind of creature? The creature was based on the movie Forbidden Planet, which was the monster from the id. The secret that Daniel knows, because he was in contact with the guy running the chair, Duncan Cameron, is that they were very pissed off at these Nazis. They did not like the Nazis. They didn't like what they were doing. They thought they had too much power. They thought the potential to misuse this technology was much too vast. And they said, we need to figure out how to stop this thing from going on. They created the monster with their own thought. The official view is that it's a rift and that some interdimensional monster came through. The reality is they took advantage of the 20-year harmonic, which they knew would have that energy, and they used it to create that monster to kill the program, and it worked. So that's the truth. What's that? They would be the, what you would call in the Stargate SG-1, the Tok'ra, the inside people who are not going along with their bosses, but they're rebelling, the white hats, so to speak. So,
Hold on real quick, I'm losing track of everyone. So Daniel is the burly guy you met and knocked out for Dan Burrish.
Daniel is the burly guy that I met. He named himself after Daniel in the Stargate series, Daniel Jackson.
Is he okay? Are you sure he's okay? I mean,
I'm sure that he's okay now.
well,
He's in seclusion. I haven't even seen him in 2 years. He usually lives out in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't like a lot of human contact because he's been psychically trained. He was measured as a P7. He had a special psychic gift called a conduit, which allowed him to feel other people's emotions and thoughts very, very strongly. And as a conduit, he was able to take, like did everybody see the movie Powder? He could do just that. In fact, it's possible, because he was the only person they ever found that could do that, it's possible that the movie Powder was written about him. I don't know that for a fact, but it's possible. He also has some really weird stories. He said that he was accosted by a gray extraterrestrial when he was in his remote location, and he shot it with a shotgun. And he said that they found out in these programs that the extraterrestrial physiology is like a vegetable and not like a body. So you can shoot them and they don't get hurt. This thing, and it just sort of kept walking. Very weird, huh? So yeah, and that's what's so strange is that when I was in high school, I wrote a story about a guy who shoots an extraterrestrial with a shotgun. And we started to find all these weird correspondences. The first time I took LSD, and I have done acid, I did 20 some odd trips. I had a very strange experience. As I was coming down the stairs, I was peeking. I was like, what in the world is happening to me? I had this feeling that if I did not create the floor under my feet with my mind, that I would fall through the floor. And so I'm walking very carefully like this, tripping, just, oh shit. It turns out that that's exactly what happened in the Rainbow Project Philadelphia experiment. It turns out that the people who could remember where they were before they went into this gray mist of zero time didn't get stuck in the hull of the ship. But the people who couldn't remember where the ship was and couldn't create the ship from memory, when they got through, they were stuck in the hull and died in many cases because you can't pull somebody out. So he said, he has some weird ideas, and, he thought that I was connected to the project somehow, like my soul is basically helping to relieve the karma of the planet through this thing that happened. And I guess this is part of what I have to do, is share this with you, because obviously there's a reason why I met this guy. And that's the funny thing, too, is you can tell that this is real because people ask me a question, and I pop out with something new, because I've had many, many hours of conversation with Daniel. No, I'm not gay. No, we're not homosexually involved. Somebody wrote that on the internet. It's like, forget it. I haven't even seen him in 2 years. We were just friends, that's all. Okay? Get over it. And even if I was gay, which I'm not, what possible difference would that have to my message or to the value of the material that I'm sharing with you? Can I get an amen on that? Come on. I mean, really, let's just let go of these ridiculous prejudices, because everybody has a right to be here. Every soul is precious beyond measure. I am not a racist. The DNA level shows us that we are so similar that you cannot actually tell what somebody's race is from a genetic test. There's only very, very weird special things that they have to go out of their way to find to look. But we're 99.9% the same. It is. It's a smear tactic, and it's being used to dumb us down and to get us fighting with each other rather than looking to the source of the problem. Okay? But that's what we're doing. By shedding light on it, we're helping to understand it. So, the reason why I'm going to go into rifts and holes in time is because it has to do with 2012, and it has to do with you breaking down the conditioning. Let me finish the sentence. Breaking down the conditioning that has kept you from seeing the greater reality that we live in. Question?
Can you go back to the 20-year space-time cycle?
Yep.
So you were saying before that at the apex of the current cycle, you get a rift in time, and one was created in 1943, another in 1983. Is there a possibility of that happening again at some point in the other?
Yeah.
Okay. He asked a good question, which is, okay, the apexes of the wave and the bottoms of the wave is a 20-year cycle, but especially from top to top, the 40-year cycle from 43 to 83, You get this big conduit. You get this big rift that was created by the Philadelphia experiment. Now again, it could have been anywhere. It was the fact that the Philadelphia experiment was done when it was that created a harmonic coupling 40 years later. That's all. I don't know for a fact that that was on the peak of the wave. He didn't say that. However, this wave is a subharmonic. It's only a subharmonic. The 2012 wave is much more powerful because we're dealing with ultimately a 26,000-year cycle.